Hey, work to your potential, not your quota. If you want to stay really motivated, if you want to answer the question to why people that have already made it keep pushing, it is because they don't operate on quotas, they operate off potential. They're driven to reach their potential. This is also tied to their ethical obligation. They know what they're capable of. Nobody can tell you what you're capable of. You're the only one that knows, okay? So work to your potential, not your quota. Quotas are numbers. Who made them up? Some guy says, okay, your quota is blah, blah, okay? Based on what? How did he come up with that quota? He only picked that quota, that number, because he thinks it's significant or compared to other people maybe in your industry. Look, don't operate on quotas. You want them, clearly you want them, but you want to be driven to reach your potential, not just some number, some mechanics. Hey, my potential, I know. Nobody else knows it. I know what it is. You know yours. Work to your potential, not just a quota, and I promise you, you will be on fire day and night.
Your values and your goals should be aligned. They should not be adversarial. They shouldn't be counter to each other. And if you think about what your goals are, your goals should be set up in a way that they support your values, and vice versa. That's just the way it is. So I'm not sure where this is going to be an issue. If you're setting up goals that are contrary to your values, you got some issues. Now, I guess if you had the goal of winning the blue belt jiu-jitsu championships, and in order to win, you cheated, like you claimed someone was reaping your leg and you said, oh, you tap and you get the guy to qualified and you win. That could be an example, right?
Yeah.
Now, do I support that? No. You know, that's wrong. You go win against the values of martial arts to do that. So you didn't win anything and you didn't achieve your goal because you weren't actually the best.
Right.
So I say no on that one. Another one, let's say you wanted to make a certain level of profit at your company. So you cheated a little bit on the quality of the manufacturing and you sold items that weren't quite reliable. Do I support that? No, right? And why? Let me tell you why. Because your goal is not even aligned with your goal itself. Because when you start making substandard manufactured items, what's going to happen in the long run? People are going to say, hey, we don't like these.
Yeah.
We're not going to buy them anymore. So you didn't win. You might have won in the short term, but you didn't win. And again, you're going against your value. You should have values that you don't want to, take profit over making good product. And again, in the long run, that value is going to cost you, right? People aren't going to want to buy your product anymore.
It's only one way to get rich, and that's quick. That's not a get-rich-quick scheme, though. Because the world's too expensive to get rich slowly. But what I mean by getting rich quick is that there are certain things you have to know on the inner game of wealth, how you manage your emotional state, your beliefs, your standards, your focus. Then in the outer game, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, how to develop multiple streams of income. It takes time. That's where the hard work, because a lot of hard work goes into getting this lined up and that lined up. Mm-hmm. But once you have it all lined up and you've done the work, then you can make money very, very quickly. So it's not a scheme, but you got to get rich quick and you have to put the work in. I say, if you don't want to work hard, good luck. I mean, I don't know any rich people that don't work really, really hard. That's the bottom line. So hard work and knowing stuff, skills.
There's no quick fix, easy
fix.
It's
not, again, when you get rich, it happens quickly, but there's a lot of work that goes up to that point before the money starts pouring in. That's the distinction that I think a lot of people who are not wealthy, they don't get that. They think that you accumulate money a little bit at a time. It doesn't work that way. You work, don't get the result, and bam, one last piece of the puzzle clicks in, whether it's not knowing how to close, it all happens quickly.
I spoke at an education summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at an education summit for Apple. At the education summit for Microsoft, I would say that 70% of the executives spent about 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Education Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One is playing this way, and one is playing that way. One is playing finite, and the other one is playing infinite. Guess which one gets frustrated. So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. And let me tell you, this thing was spectacular. It was the most elegant piece of technology I'd ever used. The user interface was incredible. The design was spectacular. I absolutely loved it. It was easy to use, and it was bright and gorgeous and fantastic. It didn't work on iTunes, which is a different problem, so I couldn't use it, but it was amazing. And elegant. My God, it was elegant. So I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a very senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy. And, you know, I like to stir pots. So I turned to him, I said, you know, Microsoft gave me their new Zune, and it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player understands sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. Sometimes your product is better and sometimes it's worse. The goal isn't to be the best every day. The goal isn't to outdo your competition every day. That's a finite construction. If I had said to Microsoft, I've got the new iPod Touch and it's so much better than your Zune, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? React, 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 react. Finite players play to beat the people around them. Infinite players play to be better than themselves. To wake up every single day and say, how can we make our company a better version of itself today than it was yesterday? How can we create a product this week that's better than the product we created last week? We also have to play the infinite game. It's not about being ranked number one. It's not about having more followers on Twitter than your friends. It's not about outdoing anyone. It's about how to outdo yourself. It's not about selling more books or getting more TED views than somebody else. It's about how to make sure that the work that you're producing is better than the work you produced before. You are your competition. And that is what ensures you stay in the game the longest. And that is what ensures you find joy. Because the joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement.
If you think you're going to be a lot happier if you've got 2x instead of x, you're probably making a mistake. I mean, you ought to find something you like that works with that, and you'll get in trouble if you think that making 10x or 20x is the answer to everything in life, because then you will do things like borrow money when you shouldn't, or maybe cut corners on things that your employer wants you to cut corners on. Or it just doesn't make any sense. You won't like it when you look back on it. 3 things in hiring people: look for integrity, intelligence, and energy. And he said if that person didn't have the first 2, that the latter 2 would kill them. Because if they don't have integrity, you want them dumb and lazy. You don't want them smart and energetic.
All of those liabilities that they talked about started turning into assets. When they did Conan the Barbarian, the director came to me and he said, if we wouldn't have you, we would have had to build one. And on Terminator, the director said, I couldn't imagine to have anyone play Terminator that wouldn't have an accent and they wouldn't have your body. I cannot imagine the line, I'll be back, with a normal American accent. It works so perfectly that you have this German accent. So all of those things that they say are liabilities became an asset. As moment went on, it grew and grew, and I went from one movie to the next, started making more and more money, and then I ended up being the highest paid actor with $30 million on Terminator 3.
I directed like music videos before for the Foo Fighters, and it's easy. I honestly believe that if you're focused and passionate and driven, you can achieve anything you want to achieve in life. Because I honestly believe that, because you'll figure it out. You know what I mean? So I never took lessons to play the drums. I just figured it out. And I never took lessons to play guitar. I took maybe a few, but I just listened to Beatles records, you know? And so, but I would listen to it. I would listen and practice by myself in my bedroom obsessively. And so throughout life, I've always kind of figured that that's just how you do stuff. Like if you have a natural inclination and a real like drive to do something, that you can figure it out.
Well, now that we can see how short life really can be, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? That's a trigger. That's the biggest trigger that I have ever experienced. what are you going to do the rest of your life? And what I had to do is I had to start taking some of my own advice. I had been telling people, I had written about it for a very long time, that if you're doing something that you're not totally committed to, if you're doing something that you're not totally passionate about, you're compromising yourself every day.
It's very easy to mistake an impulse that comes to you for some deeper answer that comes out of the stillness. And so in any decision-making process, you have basically two factors. Well, most people only have, you have the information that's available to you, and so make sure that you have the information, that all the facts that you need. Sometimes, before making a decision, you may have a number of facts, and sometimes these facts may not be sufficient. So then you go within and see what questions you can ask in order to elicit more facts or information from whoever is capable of giving to you that information. This, I'm talking in very general terms, whether you're in business or wherever you are, or some personal decision that you need to arrive at. On one level, facts need to be looked at. What is the situation? And sometimes the facts are not clear enough, or there are not enough facts, and you become still and see what questions you can ask. Somebody may be able to supply more detailed facts, but in order to ask the right question, you already need a moment of stillness. So you may not immediately get an answer through stillness. The first step, as you become alert and still, is another question. A very important thing in decision-making process is not to come up with a decision, but to ask the right question that can elicit what you need in order to arrive at a decision. And in order to ask the right question, there needs to be that alert stillness for a moment, and in that alert stillness, you kind of listen within, and then a question comes. This is, I often, when they call me and say, we've had this or that offer, somebody wants you to do this, somebody wants you to do that interview, somebody wants to do that. And very often, I don't immediately say yes or no. I usually come up with a few questions. What, in addition to the information that they gave me, well, what about that and that and that? And then say, oh, okay, I'll get back to you, I'll find out. And then they call again, then I know a bit more. And sometimes, on the basis of the factual information, you already know whether you want to do it or not. You more easily know that you don't want to do it just by looking at the facts.
Stay in front of the competition, because there's two ways in this industry. You move with it, or it moves you. And I've seen so many sad stories across the decade where chefs have just got lazy, given up, and lost that hunger to be competitive, because it's the best job in the world. That's not really a job, it's a passion. Because when you're rubbing shoulders, and here we are now, 10 years later, and I've got a restaurant next door to Jamie Oliver's, and we're both literally 2 meters apart. Phenomenal chef, and we keep each other on our toes. So that's exciting for me, and that's been the one key issue across the 10 years of filming Kitchen Nightmares. Never, ever, ever give up.
My advice would be the same for any kind of entrepreneur, and that is make sure that you are focused on something you're passionate about. So if you look at the early internet companies, they were started and focused on doing something that they thought was very interesting long before the internet was fashionable in any way. We are currently an underdog once again. We've been in business for 6 years, and there was exactly 1 year where we were not the underdog, and that was 1999. I like the underdog years because it makes, I liked it when all the people we hired, their parents told them they were crazy. Like that was kind of the good era. Fortunately, it's back. In 1999, all the parents were like, giving their brothers and sisters high fives. You know, my son is working at Amazon.com. So that's a very, you can't follow the fashion when you're trying to do a startup company, or I think really anything in life. But you have to, as an entrepreneur, if you're gonna build a company, pick something you think is interesting that has the intersection of genuinely creating real customer value, and then just stay right there and let the wave catch you.
You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear. So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying I'm the proof that you can ask the universe for it. Please. And if it doesn't happen for you right away, it's only because the universe is so busy fulfilling my order. My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
So many people put me down and say, Nick, you look too weird and no one's really your friend and you can't do this and you can't do that. And I couldn't change anything. It's not like just fixing my hair one day and everything's fine. It's not like, you know, just whatever. I couldn't change my circumstance. I couldn't just one day wake up and say, hey, give me arms and legs. I need arms and legs. You know what I mean? Like, I went to a bodybuilder, you know, and said, can you make me some arms and legs? No, I'm joking. Bodybuilder, you get it? Right? So here's the thing, you know, I go up to people, can you give me a hand? You know, just joking. But it was so hard because people put me down. And I started believing that I was not good enough. I started believing that I was a failure. That I'll never ever be somebody who people would like or people would accept. And it was so hard, man. I thought to myself, I can't go on the soccer field like everybody else, and I can't ride my bike, and I can't skateboard, and all these sort of things. And I started getting depressed. I thought, what kind of purpose do I have to live? I mean, are you just here to live to die? I mean, is there not a purpose for me? Is there not a purpose in life? And I had questions and no answers. And I asked my mom and dad, why did this happen? I asked doctors, why did this happen? They don't know. There are some things in life that are out of your control that you can't change and you got to live with. The choice that we have, though, is either to give up or keep on going. I want to ask you, what are you going to believe? Are you going to believe in yourself? Are you going to believe everybody else's judgment on you? Are you going to believe people when they say that you're a failure? Well, no one really likes you, no one really cares about you. And it's not really to say that, hey, you need someone to come up and say, hey, really, I like you, I care about you. No, it's not that, but it's the fact that people put you down. People don't even look you in the eye. People ask you how you are, and you say fine, but you're not fine, and they'll never know that.
I've never actually thought I was, starting a company as such. I just saw situations as I traveled in life where I felt I could improve on the way things were being done by other people. So, one of my favorite phrases is "screw it, let's do it," and I've used that phrase a lot of times. And we just love going in and trying to shake up industries and doing it better than it's been done before.
You cuss all the time. Why? Well, I hate to say it, the best way for me to get how I feel across, I can't sit here and say, you know what, yeah, I went through Hell Week and man, it was really hard. No, that takes your damn soul, rips it inside out, and then they say, now we're going to start. It allows me to express where I was at a point of my life. If I don't give you all of me, why the hell am I here? Why? How will you learn from me? People take so much offense to me. You will never learn from people if we always tap dance around the truth.
Oh God, I love that.
We tap dance around the truth by finding the right words so I don't hurt you because you have thin skin. No, tighten up, people. It's okay. Trust me, it's okay. You might be called nigger one day. It's okay. You might be called some Jewish word or some faggot or gay word. It's okay. Let them call you that. What are you going to do now? They don't own your life. How are you going to control that now? How are you going to flip it upside down and say, Roger that, now I'm going to harness this and you'll read about me years from now? How? That's the question. How are you going to do that? Thicken your skin. Become more of a human being. Don't be afraid of the reflection in the mirror, because that's all you can be afraid of. Once you overcome the reflection in the mirror, you've done it.
Ideas are worth nothing. I mean, ideas are really, they're not a dime a dozen. They're just nothing. All the good founders I know, even the bad founders, can come up with ideas all day long. It doesn't mean anything. You have to be able to execute. And one of the sort of maxims that I was told once was, your success will be measured in the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. So I often get asked if an entrepreneur should, say, start a business based on one of their passions, or if they should find the most attractive market opportunity and build a business out of that, whether they like it or not. I don't think it's either or. I think you need both. I would say look at your own credit card statement. Identify where you spend an unusual percentage of your income. Where are you price insensitive? Then how old are you? What gender are you? Where do you live? And design a product that has all of those things intersecting.
I tend to be incredibly modest in terms of describing your talents, and you always seem to belittle your abilities to a certain extent, when clearly there's a reason why everything you do has been working out. I was reading about how you said that to a certain extent that comes from your punk rock roots.
Yep, there's no other choice. In those days, there was no idea of this makes money. There's no idea of like, this is my future. It was like a week at a time. We have 5 shows. We're gonna get to Sunday. Whew. And even those days were like fraught with turbulence. And so I never really saw a future. None of us did. And some of us, didn't make it. Some of them are dead. And some of them are just kind of trying to recreate their past. And so I realized that I have to be very hardworking because I don't have kind of the ease of talent. And I come from that. And I think in a lot of ways it served me very well, in that I am as kind of hardworking as I've ever been, completely without confidence. I have none. I don't want any, because I think you turn your back on the thing, and that's when you get gored, is when you think, I got this. I never think I got this. I think, oh man, don't screw this up. And I go at everything, like including you and I sitting here right now. I'm trying to be fully engaged. And that intensity, I think, has served me quite well, but it comes from punk rock, absolutely. Last boss I ever had was my boss at Haagen-Dazs, my ice cream job. And to this day, he still comes to my shows. And whenever I see Steve, who got me my first apartment, I was living in my car, he believed in me. Whenever I see him, I get all weepy. I always tell him, it's good to see you, sir. Henry, you can call me Steve. I can't do that, sir. Because he trusted me with his money. And I said, let me run your store. I know how to do this. I can do this. He's like, well, if you screw up, you're out of here. I said, I won't screw up. And I ran his store. And so, but it was anger that said, I'll be here all damn week. I'll get this whole thing right. I fired his staff and rehired a bunch of people who can really work. And it was out of anger. Like, I'll be back in 4 hours to run this $3.75 an hour job into the ground. And then I joined Black Flag, and I thought I was a hardworking person. Then you meet the guys in Black Flag who are so driven. You'd see Greg Ginn work 23-hour days. Like, Greg, you're still on the phone. I know. Greg, when did you eat? I don't know. Greg, when was the last time you showered? Do we have a shower? Like, the guy, we were not going to be stopped. And I kind of go at that intensity, kind of anything I do. Like, you're a very calm, good-looking young man. Look at me, I'm a spaz sitting next to you. Like, I'm doing an interview with you. I can't help it. Focused. I'm sweating, man. And so, but I'm like this going to the airport, like 10 miles out. And so, it's anger that has informed kind of my life, and unflatteringly, a sense of vengeance. Every damn person who said I wouldn't be anything, I'm crushing them every day. Everybody I had to endure in any band I was in, every day, into a powder. Yeah. Thank you. And I wish them no ill. I just wish to shine brighter, and if it burns my body to a crisp, I'm happy to go right now.
There are some mountains that can be climbed by people like you and me. We got to get a little bit better condition, but I mean, it's not like the mountain climber mountains that would be way beyond our skill level. But some of these mountains that can be climbed by you and me, it takes a day to get to the top, and then you just camp up there and you come down the next day. And on many of these places in Switzerland where you could do that, about halfway up the mountain is what they call the halfway house, halfway up the mountain. So a group of people starts off with a guide in the morning, and about noon, you're kind of tired. You've been walking now for 4 or 5 hours, and you're coming up to the halfway house, and it's just it's a wonderful sight. Because as soon as you enter in the halfway house, you can smell the food, and they're getting ready for a good lunch, and you sit down, there's a fire in the fireplace, and there's nice soft chairs, and you can just rest your body and refresh your body. And so the people go into the halfway house, and they eat and laugh and enjoy and just really just kind of take in that wonderful, refreshing atmosphere. About an hour and a half after being in the halfway house, the guide gets up and says, well, gang, it's time to put on your gear. We got to hike. We got to get on up to the top. This is a fact. About half the people decide not to go on up to the top. They're sitting around the table and they're just saying, you know what, go on up. You're going to be coming by here tomorrow. You're going to be having lunch here again tomorrow. We're just going to hang here. And so the people that want to get to the top, they put their stuff on and they kind of leave. And the rest of the people sit behind. They eat a little bit more food, get around the piano, sing some songs, get around the fireplace, enjoy the fire, warm themselves by the fire. And all play games all afternoon, kind of enjoy themselves. But about 4:30, 4:45 in the afternoon, without anybody saying a word, the people who stayed in the halfway house, they slowly go over to where the window is, the big window, and they start looking outside, and they start looking up at the top of that mountain, and as they look at the top of that mountain, they see their friends. Their friends are now getting the tents out, and they're getting ready to prepare for the night, and it becomes very quiet, very somber. Because everybody in the halfway house realizes the mistake they've made. They've sold their mission for a little bit of comfort for a few hours. Next morning, down come their friends, and by noon, they come into the halfway house. And when they come in the halfway, they are laughing, they're high-fiving, they're talking about what they've seen, where they've been, experiences, the fact that it was almost impossible to get up there. In fact, they had to help each other get up there, and how they joined teams and held hands, and they just tell them all these stories and talk about the pictures they've taken, and they got the group picture up there with the flag at the top, and the people who remain behind, they don't say much. They just eat their lunch and then follow the rest of them down to the bottom of the hill where their friends are waiting for them. And those who paid the price and went to the top, who understood now is the time to reach the mission, they hug and tell stories and celebrate. And the others, they just kind of slip off and get in their car and go home because they realize they're never going to be what they wanted to be. They're never going to see what they wanted to see. They're never going to do what they wanted to do because they failed to realize when they're at the halfway house, now's the time to rest, and they go on.
You have to realize that whatever your day is, whatever you're doing, whatever your job is, whatever people think of you or project you to be, none of it matters, really, until you look round and see people who are in need. And I think probably the best benefit of my job is to help, to make people smile, who otherwise wouldn't or couldn't have a smile on their face. So, yeah, That's my deal.
If somebody said to you, you'll have or you'll be as successful as you are now, what would you had said back then?
I believe you. That's what I would have said. Because I did believe.
Yes.
I believed in it. I had very few people who told me that. I had a small group of people that would tell me something like that. Other than that, it was just me telling myself.
Yep.
So if someone came up to me and told me that all the way back then, I'd say you're damn right.
One of the things that's really interesting about the Old Testament is that, and the Jews in the Old Testament, is that they don't take the path of Cain. Every time they're walloped by God, which is like fairly frequently, they say, we must have done something wrong and we have to set ourselves right. And that's an unbelievably heroic attitude, because that's the alternative to cursing fate. It's like you take the responsibility for failure onto yourself. And you think, well, maybe if I just had my act together a little bit more, if I took advantage of every opportunity that was put in front of me, if I wasn't resentful and bitter, then I could have done something that would have tilted the situation in a different direction. And like, that's almost inevitably true. Dostoevsky, I think, said something like, every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. And that's, you know, it's a crazy statement, right? It's a crazy statement. And he was a pretty extreme person in many, many ways. But there's a level at which that's metaphysically true, you know, because what happens is that it's failure to act often that's the most catastrophic. You know, I mean, it's to not do the right thing when the situation presents itself, and it's very specific. You know, you're constantly in situations where you could do the right thing if you were willing to take a risk that's actually of relatively moderate size. And you know that you could take the risk, and you know that you should take the risk, and you don't. And that happens to people all the time. And then what happens is the thing that they didn't oppose grows a little bit, and they shrink a little bit. And that starts a loop, hey?
Enough. Like, living by somebody else's rules is a humongous mistake. I've just literally sat down with 5 people under the age of 27, and it's so refreshing. It is so refreshing. If you have not jumped on the bandwagon of doing exactly what the you want to do, which is skiing for the next 3 years, or working at a job that's not what your parents want or what society wants, this video is just called Enough. Enough. Make this little 1-2 minute video, depends on when I finish, the piece of content that gets you to stand up and take life by its throat. Do something. Stop being scared. Stop letting the way you were raised, the fear as an offense, take that away. Let me be the person. I'll take the blame. I loved that some of my employees are like, my parents don't love what you're saying. Good, parents, because if you are playing defense and if you are living a life where your kids' lives are the way you're being fulfilled, you're a loser, parents. And so enough parents imposing their way. You want your kids to be happy on your terms. Enough the kid that's sitting right now at a desk and saw this in a feed and you hate your job. Enough. Stand up, get the out of here, and do you. Live your life. You got one life. Do something about it.
Able to come through on your word, it allows the guys that you're leading, male or female, to be able to say, okay, we can follow this person because he won't let us down. You know, for me, as the leader of our franchise and the leader of my household and the leader of so many, you know, different things, I think it's the confidence, but it's also you practicing what you preach. I'm not a guy who just talks about it. I actually go out and do it as well, from a basketball perspective or from a leadership perspective with my kids and my foundation. You know, we have a promise initiative where they promise me that they will go to school, they will listen to their teachers, they'll be great to their classmates, and I promise them that I will continue to be a great role model, a father figure for them, and not let those guys down. So I take that responsibility, and I don't just talk about it, I actually do it as well. So when you're able to come through on your word, it allows the guys that you're leading, male or female, to be able to say, okay, We can follow this person because he won't let us down. No matter if it's going good or bad. You know, every day is not a bed of roses. We understand that, and you have to be able to handle adversity as well.
There is an advantage to being what I like to call now hardcore. Hardcore. I don't know quite how to describe it. It's a combination of tenacious and dedicated and passionate and committed, something like that. Hardcore. I learned about being hardcore from math concentrators at Harvard. I'm not going to ask whether we have any math concentrators here, but I would say that's where I got kind of my lesson. I mean, people could just go crazy, focused. And it wasn't just that people were genius, but working and working and working and working. You know, I'd sit in my room working on a problem set, and after 3 hours, I'm a little ADD, I just couldn't take it. The most hardcore people could just power through anything. And the advantage of being that tenacious and dedicated and committed, I claim, it helped us at Microsoft. It's fundamental at Microsoft, but I learned it here at Harvard.
How much of your training is dedicated to visualization?
Fighting, there is a big science behind it. I believe I'm champion, not because I'm the strongest guy, not because also I'm the more skilled guy. I'm very skilled, I'm very strong, I'm very athletic, I'm fast, but I think the reason why I'm champion is my mind. The way I'm very good to using my skills to neutralize my opponent's skill and make the fight turning to putting the odds on my side. I think that's a key.